What's good, y'all? What's good, Real Talk Squad? This is Miles, and you're listening to Real Talk with Miles Johnson, where you know I always keep it real. Let's get right into it, man. Y'all know what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it real. Now, before I start this episode, like, comment, subscribe, and man, Happy New Year to you. Guess what? We're about to hit, if we haven't already, hit 10,000 followers. 10,000 followers on Real Talk with MJ's Instagram page. So be sure to follow that. And on TikTok, we're about to hit 10K. I'm trying to tell you, Kobe year, we're coming different. Now, in this episode, what's the title? Is A.J. Brown really the problem? I had to think about this because as somebody who aspires to be in sports media, wants to be in those rooms interviewing athletes, telling their stories authentically. I don't like when athletes refuse to talk to the media. On the other side, I know why, because sometimes what they do gets misconstrued for views, for likes, whatever it is, and they're just painting them in a bad light. Then there's sometimes where the athlete puts it on himself to get the criticism. So you have A.J. Brown reposting what Kevin Durant said about the media trying to put him in a bad light. But the media, there are exceptions to people that, are just doing the most. But KD, you kind of put this stuff on yourself. I mean, you went to a team that you lost to in the playoffs. People are going to be talking about you as if you're a snake. That's just what's going to happen. You got to live with your decision. The same thing applies to A.J. Brown, although there are exceptions, and I'm going to talk about that exception. But with A.J. Brown, you can't be so emotional on the sideline. You can be emotional, but you don't want everybody in the world to know that there's issues with the Eagles, right? It's kind of like if you have a girlfriend and y'all going through a rough patch and you're letting everybody know that you're unhappy. You're letting everybody know that you're discontent with where y'all at right now. Versus if you keep everything in the house, it's not going to look as bad. You're not going to have your friends asking you what happened with you and your girl. If you keep it shut, for all they know, we're good the whole time. So with A.J. Brown, if you show your emotions less, now everybody's different. He's not going to be like Smitty, who's not going to do that. But if you show your emotions less, then you're not going to get all these questions about your attitude, how you feel about the coaching staff, how you feel about Brian Johnson. They're not going to ask you that because they would not know. So that's my one piece of criticism to A.J. Brown. But I read this column from Marcus Hayes at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he was saying that they have a problem with number 11. They have a problem with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is the solution, not the problem. The problem is the coaching staff. Everybody with a brain that has watched the Eagles from start to finish every game this year knows the problem is the coaching staff that for some way, somehow can't get the most out of this talented roster they have. This offense is way too talented to not even have a complete game from start to finish this entire year. This defense, although it's bad, it should not be this bad. It shouldn't be this bad. You have a stud in Jalen Carter. You have another great young player in Jordan Davis. You have some savvy vets in Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. You have Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick that made a lot of strides last year to be dominant, to be a part of that dominant defensive line that produced 70-plus sacks. So the fact that the defensive line is not feasting, that's on coaching. Now, the secondary, when you have Slay out, Avonte Maddox out, you have Reed Blankenship in and out. Although he isn't he ain't a world beater. But I'm saying is the secondary probably was gonna take a step back, especially with Bradbury regressing like crazy. So the secondary and then the linebacking core with Nakobe out, and then with injuries to Morrow and Zach Cunningham, Morrow and Zach Cunningham, we didn't even expect. We expected Zach Cunningham to play, but we really did not expect Nicholas Morrow to play. So I can see why our second and third levels are playing very, very well. But the defensive line, that's on the coaching, right? And so when we talk about the coaching, what am I going to talk about? The question isn't, is A.J. Brown the problem? The question is Nick Siriani the problem? And he is. And I'll say this. I want to ask you this question about Nick Siriani. What does Nick Siriani do well? Please tell me. He doesn't call the plays. That's Brian Johnson. He doesn't call the defense. Unfortunately, that's Matt Patricia. Apparently, he manages the game, but he can't do that because every single game we have 0 timeouts or like 1 timeout because of miscommunication. So what the hell does this guy do well? I could do what he does. Just give rah-rah speeches. Guys, we got to stick together, guys. We got to tackle the day. It's not a Disney movie, Nick. You actually have to put in the X's and O's and actually coach this team to victory. You're not doing that. And the thing is, if the Eagles can fire Doug Peterson a couple of years after he won and became the only coach to win a Super Bowl, I could care less if Nick Sirianni got this team to a Super Bowl last year after being carried by his coordinators. I could care less. He should be on the hot seat. And if the Eagles are one and done in the playoffs, I promise you this city will be screaming, fire Nick Sirianni, because he's overrated. He's not a great coach. He is a good coach that has been carried by coordinators and has been carried by a great quarterback and overall great team. And this year, he has basically wasted Kelsey's prime. Oh, not his prime, but he has wasted Jason Kelsey. He has wasted Fletcher Cox. He has wasted Brandon Graham. He has wasted Lane Johnson. You are wasting the last great years of your vets. And this will be probably the last year where we have all those guys together. We might have Lane Johnson come back, maybe Fletcher Cox, I don't know. But this is definitely like the last year that we'll have all those guys together. So you wasted this year coaching terribly. It's always something. It's always something. My last point is about the Jalen Hurts slander. Jalen Hurts clearly hasn't looked as great as he did last year. But unless you're blind, unless you haven't really watched the Eagles this year, what are you going to say? Jalen Hurts regressed. Jalen Hurts isn't the same quarterback. No. He still makes the same throws he made last year. He's still dynamic running the ball. He's still a big reason why the tush push is so effective. And the real reason is the coaching. And you can say that for a lot of guys. What happened with Josh Allen when he lost Brian Daboll? He took a little bit of a step back. What happened with Patrick Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy left? This Chiefs team and the Chiefs offense took a little bit of a step back. So when you have a coach in Brian Johnson who clearly is not ready for prime time, you can't blame it on Jalen Hurts, who is in his super young years as a starting quarterback. He's still very, very young, bro. He's still very, very young. When you have a coach that is not ready for prime time, it's not all on Jalen Hurts for why he wasn't as dynamic as he was last year. But you actually have to watch the games and not just look at the box score to be like, oh, well, Hurts regressed, all this BS. You was just waiting. You was just waiting for Hurts to mess up and all that stuff. He played a great game against the Cardinals, but again, the coaching failed him. And it's unfortunate that he has to be the butt of some of the blame for the Eagles, lack of success this season because of inept coaching. I'll give you the Jets game. He was bad. I'll give you the Seahawks game. Although he did have 2 rushing touchdowns and 80 yards rushing, he wasn't very, very good. He was bad that game too. I'll give you those 2 games. I don't know if it was against the 49ers where he fumbled the ball. You can't do that. So I'll give you like those 3 games. But this last loss wasn't on him. And the loss to the Giants wasn't on him. I mean, it wasn't a loss. It felt like one, but that nail biter wasn't on him. It is on coaching, and it's on coaching as to why this team is not fulfilling its full potential. Like, comment, subscribe. I love y'all, and please, please, please follow that Instagram page. I'm gonna go live if we hit 10K. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Peace out. Happy New Year.